If I hear one more word about my money, there won't be any polite conversations left. I didn't shout. I just stared straight at my father, Gary, while my stepmother, Diane, froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. She had just made a joke about accessing my military savings for family security, and she expected me to laugh. I will personally explain to her exactly where she stands, I continued, my voice steady, and why my money is not hers. Diane's smile vanished instantly. My father shrank into his chair, unable to look me in the eye. This wasn't a teenage tantrum. It was a soldier's warning. And judging by the fear in their eyes, they knew I meant it. Before I tell you exactly what Diane did the moment I turned my back, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. 3 days later, I was back on base, surrounded by the familiar, sterile hum of military life. I didn't have a bio to offer people. I was 29, a combat medic, and I lived my life according to protocols. Assess, stabilize, evacuate. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford in the field, and I certainly wasn't going to indulge in it when dealing with my finances. I sat on the edge of my bunk, laptop open, running my weekly audit. Most people checked their social media first thing in the morning. I checked my credit report. It was a habit born from distrust, a survival mechanism honed over years of living in a house where privacy was a suggestion, not a right. Everything looked normal until I scrolled to the bottom of the recent inquiries list. There was a single line item that stopped my breath. A hard money lender, the kind that charged predatory interest rates and didn't ask too many questions, had run a credit check on me 48 hours ago. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the computer across the room. I picked up my phone and dialed my father. Gary, I said when he answered, skipping the pleasantries. Why is a high-risk lender running my credit? Batya, he stammered, his voice thick with that specific kind of nervous exhaustion he always wore around Diane. It's nothing. Just Diane was looking into some investment options. He probably just clicked a wrong button online. You know how she is with computers. He was lying. I could hear it in the pitch of his voice, the way he rushed the explanation. Diane wasn't bad with computers. She was calculating. And she wasn't looking into options. You don't accidentally apply for a hard money loan. I hung up before he could spiral into more excuses. I didn't need his confession. I already had the motive. The memory hit me then, sharp and bitter. I was 16, sitting at the kitchen island trying to do homework while Diane paid bills. She hadn't been shouting. She had been calm, almost clinical, as she tapped the calculator. Electricity is up, she had said, not looking at me. Water is up. Food costs are through the roof. She had looked at me then, her eyes sweeping over me like I was an appliance that was drawing too much power. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to keep another human being alive, Batya? The space you take up. The heat you use. The noise. She had a ledger. I saw it once. A literal notebook where she tracked the cost of my existence. Every meal, every school trip fee, every pair of shoes my father bought me. She had kept a running tally of my childhood, viewing every dollar spent on me not as parenting, but as a loan she expected to recall. That was the key. Diane didn't think she was stealing $320,000 from me. In her twisted, entitled math, she believed she was simply collecting on a debt. She thought I owed her for the inconvenience of my survival. I looked back at the screen at the inquiry from the lender. This wasn't just greed. It was a billing statement. She was coming to collect, and she was using my father as the delivery system. I closed the laptop. The anger in my chest was cold, heavy, and useful. I wasn't going to call her. I wasn't going to argue about how much water I used in high school. I was going to find out exactly how deep she had dug this hole, and then I was going to bury her in it. I didn't call the lender. I didn't waste time on hold listening to elevator music and explanations. I went straight to their web portal. The site was slick, aggressive, the kind of interface designed to get you to sign your life away in 3 clicks or less. I typed in my own email address. The system recognized it immediately, prompting me for a password I had never created. Diane had been thorough, but she had also been arrogant. She had used my real email address to make the application look legitimate, assuming I would never check, or perhaps assuming she could delete the notifications before I saw them. But she had made one critical error. She couldn't change the recovery method without my phone. I clicked forgot password. 3 seconds later my phone buzzed. I entered the code, reset the login, and the digital doors swung open. I was in. The dashboard was a horrifying testament to her greed. There was, in bold green letters, loan approved. Amount $50,000. Status, pending disbursement. I clicked on the Documents tab. I didn't look at the interest rate. I already knew it would be criminal. I was looking for something else. In every digital transaction, there is a ghost in the machine, a metadata log that tracks exactly where and when a signature was applied. It's called an audit trail, and most amateurs don't even know it exists. I opened the certificate of completion. It was a detailed log of every interaction with the document. I scanned down to the signature line. Signed by Batya, it claimed. But right next to the timestamp was the smoking gun, the IP address. I didn't need to run a trace. I recognized the number string immediately. It was the same static IP address I had set up for my father 3 years ago to help him manage his smart home devices. The timestamp read October 14th, 2:15 p.m. On October 14th, I was 5,000 miles away in a field hospital, patching up a 19-year-old corporal who had taken shrapnel to the leg. I wasn't signing loan documents in my father's kitchen. I was scrubbing blood out from under my fingernails. Diane hadn't just forged a signature. She had left a digital fingerprint that placed her at the scene of the crime. I didn't feel the sting of betrayal anymore. That part of me had burned out the moment I saw the credit inquiry. Now I just felt the cold, hard satisfaction of a hunter who has found the blood trail. I downloaded the PDF. I took screenshots of the dashboard. I exported the IP logs. Then I changed the password again, locking Diane out of the account she had created in my name. She wouldn't know why she couldn't get back in. She would think it was a glitch. I created a new folder on my desktop. I didn't name it Family or Diane. I named it Evidence. I dragged the files into the folder. The click of the mouse sounded loud in the quiet barracks. It sounded like the safety coming off a weapon. 2 days later, my phone lit up with Diane's name. I let it ring once, twice, just long enough to steel myself, then answered. "Batya, honey," she said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that made my teeth ache. "I'm so glad I caught you. Listen, your father and I have some exciting news. We found the perfect place. A little lake house just like we always talked about." I didn't say anything. I just listened to the hum of the connection, letting her fill the silence. "It's a steal," she continued, rushing a little now. "But the sellers are moving fast. We need to close this week. There's just one tiny hiccup. The bank needs a secondary signature on some release forms. Just a formality, really. Something about clearing up that old student loan of yours so it doesn't affect our debt-to-income ratio." It was a lie so clumsy it was almost insulting. There was no student loan. I had paid for my education with service. And there was no such thing as a release form that required a closing ceremony. "A release form," I repeated, keeping my voice flat. "Exactly," she said, confident now that I hadn't hung up. "We found a way to take that accidental loan inquiry off your record, but you need to come to the closing to sign a quitclaim release. It just tells the bank you have no interest in the property so they stop bothering you." He thought she was brilliant. She was using the very credit inquiry she had generated as the bait. She was telling me she was fixing a problem she had created, while actually luring me into signing the final mortgage deed that would attach the fraudulent $50,000 down payment to a 30-year mortgage. If I signed that deed, I wasn't releasing anything. I was accepting liability. "When is the closing?" I asked. "Thursday at 2, she said. "At the title company downtown. You can make it, can't you? For your dad? He's so stressed about this falling through." I looked at the folder on my desk. The evidence was all there. I could have emailed it to her right then. I could have called the police. But that would have been messy. It would have been a domestic dispute. She would have claimed it was a misunderstanding, that she had my verbal permission, that I was just a confused, angry stepdaughter. I needed her to commit. I needed her to sit in a room with federal oversight and lie on the record. "I'll be there," I said. "Wonderful," she exclaimed. "Oh, Batya, you're a lifesaver. We'll see you Thursday." She hung up, thinking she had just secured her retirement home. She didn't know she had just secured her indictment. I sat there for a moment, listening to the silence of the barracks. My father hadn't said a word during the call. He was probably sitting right next to her, nodding, looking at his shoes. He knew. He had to know. And he was letting her lead me to the slaughter because it was easier than fighting her. That realization didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. It just calcified the last soft part of me. I opened my laptop and pulled up the flight schedules. I wasn't going home to visit. I wasn't going home to argue. I was deploying. The conference room at the title company smelled like stale coffee and lemon polish. It was a glass-walled fishbowl designed to make life-altering debt feel like a corporate achievement. There was a bowl of mints in the center of the mahogany table. Diane was eating them one after another, the crunching sound loud in the quiet room. She looked triumphant. She was wearing a cream blazer I had never seen before, likely bought for the occasion, and she was chatting animatedly with the loan officer, a man named Mr. Henderson who looked tired but professional. "We've been looking for a place on the water for years," Diane was saying, leaning forward. "Ideally, we wanted to be in by the holidays. It's just so important for the family to have a gathering place." My father, Gary, sat next to her. He looked gray. He was sweating through his dress shirt, staring fixedly at a potted fern in the corner as if it held the secrets of the universe. He knew. Deep down, past the denial and the fear of his wife, he knew this was wrong. But he was sitting there anyway. His silence was his signature. I sat on the opposite side of the table, my hands folded in my lap. I was wearing my dress uniform. I hadn't told them I was coming from the airport. I just showed up. The uniform made Mr. Henderson sit up straighter. It made Diane nervous, though she tried to hide it with a tight smile. "So glad you could make it, Batya," she said, her voice a little too high. "I know how busy you are. I wouldn't miss it, I said. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat and tapped the stack of documents in front of him. All right. Let's get started. It's a standard closing, but since there are multiple parties involved in the deed and the quitclaim, we need to go in order. He slid a thick document toward Diane. This is the Uniform Residential Loan Application, Form 1003. It finalizes the mortgage details. I just need you to verify the information one last time, particularly the declarations on page 4. This was it. The kill zone. I watched Diane pick up the pen. Her hand didn't even shake. She was so convinced of her own narrative, so certain that I was just a resource to be harvested, that she didn't perceive the danger. Section M. Mr. Henderson recited, bored and efficient. Down payment. You are certifying that the $50,000 currently in escrow is from your personal savings and is not borrowed funds. Is that correct? The room seemed to tilt. Time slowed down, stretching like taffy. I looked at the pen hovering over the paper. In that split second I felt a surge of old instinct. The urge to jump in to save my father from the fallout, to stop her before she ruined everything. It would have been so easy to say stop. But if I stopped her now, it was just a family dispute. It was a stepdaughter arguing with a stepmother. It was drama. She would cry, she would claim she was confused, she would gaslight my father into believing I was being difficult. I needed the ink to dry. I needed her to cross the line from greedy relative to federal criminal. I needed the lie to be codified, notarized, and filed with the government. That was the discipline. That was the difference between a skirmish and a war. You don't fire when the enemy is approaching. You fire when they are in the open. Yes, Diane said, her voice clear. That is correct. She checked the box marked NO next to the question, asking if any part of the down payment was borrowed. Then she signed her name. The scratch of the pen on the paper sounded like a lock clicking shut. He passed the document to my father. He hesitated, his hand trembling slightly, but Diane nudged his knee under the table. He signed. Mr. Henderson smiled, collecting the papers. Excellent. Now, Batya, we just need your signature on the quitclaim deed and the gift letter to clear the title. He slid the next stack toward me. Diane turned to me, her eyes gleaming with victory. She thought she had won. He thought the hard part was over. I didn't pick up the pen. Instead, I reached into my bag. The sound of the heavy file hitting the mahogany table was a dull thud, but in that silent room, it sounded like a gavel coming down. I didn't look at Diane. I looked directly at Mr. Henderson. I can't sign this, I said clearly, making sure the security camera caught it. That is not my signature on the down payment check, and I never applied for this bridge loan. Diane laughed nervously and tried to wave it off, but I cut her short. I slid the file to Mr. Henderson. This is a notarized affidavit of identity theft filed with the FTC this morning. Beneath it is the lender's own forensic audit trail. His smile vanished as he opened the file. The audit shows the electronic signature originated from an IP address registered to Gary and Diane Miller on October 14th at 2:15 p.m. I turned to my father. He looked sick. On that date I was deployed in a combat zone. My orders and flight records are included. Diane exploded, accusing me of lying, but Henderson stopped her. He flipped through the documents, saw the IP logs, the affidavit, and the federal form Diane had just signed, perjuring herself. This isn't a family dispute, he said flatly. He looked at me, understanding dawning. If you fund this mortgage, I added, knowing the down payment is the product of identity theft and wire fraud, you become an accessory under federal law. Henderson closed the file, pulled the papers away from Diane, and stood. The closing is terminated. This transaction is frozen. Diane screamed. Gary said nothing. Henderson picked up the phone. Security to conference room B. And notify the branch manager. Diane bolted. I left calmly, but as the elevator doors closed, Diane rushed in and attacked me, clawing for the file. I restrained her using a non-lethal hold, directly under the security camera. This is a boundary, I told her quietly. You don't cross it anymore. When the elevator opened, security was waiting. I released her immediately. She attacked me. I detained her for my safety. They took her away. Outside, my phone rang. Gary. I didn't answer. I blocked his number, Diane's, and every line they had. Not in anger, out of self-preservation. Because a suspicious activity report had been filed, it was no longer personal. It was federal. Diane was indicted weeks later for wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, attempted bank fraud and assault. The house deal collapsed. Gary's retirement was liquidated to cover her debts. He lost everything because he protected a predator. I sent him one email, a copy of the permanent restraining order. Tonight I sit in my own apartment. Modest. Clean. My bank balance is boring. Safe. Undeniably mine. Closure isn't a feeling. It's a locked door. A silent phone. And I paid for that silence in full. If you've ever had to protect yourself from the people who should have protected you, leave a heart. And if you want to see how the court case ended, subscribe. This isn't over.